I unabashedly love my higher power.
Oh, me too.
And that's not something I say out loud often.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's something we'll get into later.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very nice segue to introducing today's topic. So today's topic is reclaiming your spirituality. And I thought to bring my friend Jose onto the show today because he has a very, I think in my opinion, a very inspired way and a very relatable way of looking at a conception of a power that's greater than himself. And so that's today's topic. So as usual, if anything resonates with you, if you have a thought you want to share, send us a comment and we'll read it and we'll respond. But until then, so yeah, let's just jump right in, Jose.
Do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't, just as an aside, I don't know when I started doing this, but a couple months ago,
I'll tell you.
Well, first off, Lewis, there's something about when I'm like with Lewis and maybe his spirit is here, but whenever I'm around him, I want to shimmy when I talk to him. I'm always like, yes, like I've never been that person to shimmy. And every time like I talk to Lewis, I feel like shimmy. I think it's probably like Minnie, his alter ego. Yeah, his alter ego.
Do you think it's Minnie or do you think Lewis is the alter ego?
You know, it's really hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really hard to tell. Maybe that should be a question for Lewis. Lewis, if you're listening, let us know.
He's not listening.
He's not listening yet. He's like, okay. He's like, he's sick. Oh, he said hater. I love you. So let's talk about spirituality. So I love that you said you love your God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was born and raised Catholic and I was very fearful of God.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like one of the funny stories that I tell people is that like when I learned, I don't even know if I should share this, but when I was a kid and I learned how to masturbate, I was told, hold on, these are two parts.
We're E, don't worry. We're
E for explicit.
Yeah,
for
so
everyone.
you can share.
Okay, well, so there's two parts here. One of the things my mom said to me when I was a kid was whenever it rained, she said to me, yeah, did I ever tell you this?
No,
so my mom says whenever it rained, my mom would say to me, the reason why it's raining is because you lie and it makes the Virgin Mary cry. I think like I was like 5. I know. So every time it rained, I'm like, fuck, how does she know? You know? And then when I was a kid, I was born and raised Catholic. And so when I was a kid and I learned how to masturbate, and I was told that that was a sin, right? So every single time, my poor little me, every single time I so much as touched myself, I would cry and pray to God that I wouldn't get punished. And imagine being like a little kid thinking every time it fucking rains, you've upset the Virgin Mary, and every time you fucking touch your wiener, you're gonna go to hell. Can you imagine that? Like that's just so. That's like the kind of stress.
It's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
And for anyone not in the Bay Area, it is raining right now.
It is raining right now.
Just for some context. I don't think I knew you grew up Catholic. I was Catholic.
Of course we're Catholic.
Right.
Well, of course we were.
So I guess, okay. So yeah, I'll talk about that. So
Yeah.
I also was grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And when I say grew up Catholic, I mean like church every Sunday. Nuns from our local church would come and gather all the kids, right? So they would pick us up and I would love getting picked up. They would bring us to church. I got to be altar boy one time in my life.
Oh, wow.
It was probably, they
were like, you suck.
No,
more.
I bet you it's probably in the top 10 of my parents' like most cherished memories.
Oh, I believe it.
Because I got to wear the garb. And I did that little gay thing where like you like twirl.
Spin around.
I twirled and when I had my little like costume. It's not a costume.
It's not a costume.
But you know what I mean? The little black and white thing. I wore that. I didn't get to do the bell. I was so jealous. But so yeah, grew up Catholic, first communion, and then what was I gonna say? Teenage years.
Yeah.
The disillusionment started.
Oh yeah.
You know when you start.
Oh yeah.
When you start.
Did you do confession, confirmation, like communion, confirmation?
I did communion. Got all my toys at my party. And I stopped.
Yeah.
No, but it was because in middle school is when I started making friends who were not Latino, not Catholic,
right.
So like other cultures, and I was exposed to other things. And then obviously, like I just started asking questions because that's what children do. It's like,
yeah.
And my parents were like, "Oh yeah, no, we believe in this God and they believe in that God." And I was like, "Are they going to hell because they believe in that God?" Mm-hmm. And they were like, yes. And I was like, oh, that feels wrong to me. So I remember that being the conversation that kind of made me go, no.
You know what mine was?
What?
There was a lot of things. So part of it was, what this sounds like is we were radicalized because I remember thinking that, oh God, I haven't talked about this stuff in forever. But so I remember when I was in honors bio and I was learning about like turgor, so like plants and like what makes plants, do plant things. Much good that class did for me. But I remember learning about like the science of plants, right? And remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, why aren't they talking about God?
Oh.
And I was like, wait a minute, this is a lie. Why aren't they talking about God? God is the reason. Like there's a spirit in the plant. Like I was just, and I don't, gosh. Anyway, so I can just remember feeling naive on one end. So I was disillusioned, right? I had friends who were like atheists, whose parents were atheists, or I had friends whose parents were like Wiccan, or like anyway, so they're like tarot reading and all this other stuff. And then The Craft came out, which I was like, oh my God, what's The Craft? Do you remember The Craft? Where like literally every gay boy wanted to be Nancy.
No. Can we call the Four Corners later?
Yeah, we'll do it later. But no. So I just remember being a kid and like, I just, the God of my understanding was persecutory and mean and was angry all the time and was constantly punishing me, and you know what I mean? And so I had to stop believing in this thing that was hurting me, right? And I feel like a lot of people who were raised Catholic, like everyone has a very similar story.
Especially I feel like queer kids who grew up Catholic.
Queer kids of color who grew up Catholic with our crazy ass moms.
Yeah. But here's the thing though. Like how old were you when you had that class about the spirits and the plants?
I think I was 15.
Okay, so you're 15, right? And then I was probably like 13, 14 when I had my little moment, right? So what I've come to realize is like, oh, that's where like I became spiritually stunted, was that age. Right. So like when I finally came into the rooms, I was 30?
Yeah.
But spiritually, I was 13.
Word.
Right.
Yeah.
And that took me a while to realize, because like even like what you were saying, like the God of my understanding, I've come to realize like, oh, the stuff that I did know wasn't a lot. And what I did know wasn't even a God of like my own understanding. It was like someone else's understanding.
That's right. And even, sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's it. I'm just like, I think that was like a big barrier for me in the beginning, getting over.
No, for sure. Me too. It's like, I can remember like I just remember like feeling like God hated me, number one. And number two, that this God that hated me was telling other people to hate me. Right. And like I couldn't stomach that. Like I think I had a moral compass when I was a kid that was telling me like, this is not okay. It is not okay to have to treat children this way. It's not okay to say these things to people. And so, yeah, that was when I looked back and that's when I was like, there is no fucking God, a comment about nuns though.
Please.
So of course, like Catholic Church, and there was this nun who I absolutely love. Her name was, excuse me, her name was Sister Arena.
Aww.
Yeah, Sister Arena. Isn't that sweet? And she was the sweetest woman ever. And that is like my one positive memory of the Catholic Church, was this nun who was just loving and supportive. And she was like introducing me to like a loving God, and so maybe she planted a seed early on or something like that. But yeah, so I loved the nuns. Yeah, I love it.
They're sweet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I didn't go to Catholic school, so I don't have like
out.
Oh, you went to Catholic school?
No.
Oh.
I remember wishing I did, because they get the cute little like outfits and everything.
Oh, God, I wish I would have gone to Catholic school, because being poor and like this is a whole other story, but like having to wear the same clothes or like just all of that stuff was torture growing up. That was the other thing where I was like, there is no God. Why is my family poor? Like I went through that. Although to be fair to my family, like I didn't even know I was poor until I started meeting like wealthy kids in middle school, right? And by then I was like, oh, then that's when it felt like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, where like I realized that I was poor. I was like, oh shit, I'm embarrassed, right? Where like at one time I was surrounded by other people.
I have a dumb question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Do you think we expect things, at least from like Catholic God? Did you think like we grew up expecting things from Catholic God because we also like believed in Santa Claus who would like give us things, and so we're like raised to believe in something?
I thought, yeah, my God was like Santa Claus. Well, growing up, it was like, well, if you want something, you should pray for it, and if you don't get it, you're being punished, right? And so if you're like a young poor kid and you're not getting things, then of course you feel like you're being punished, right? God, so fucked up. God, it's just some. I think like a booger just came out of my nose.
Wait, do I get to ask you what your relationship with your higher power is?
You can.
What? Okay, what is it?
What's my relationship to my? So I think I relate to a lot of what you're saying. Like I absolutely positively love God. I love talking about God. I love like. I never in a million years thought I would be the kind of person who's like, yeah, let's talk about God. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm not opposed to like the different names that God's given. You know what I mean? Like, I think there are great teachings in the Bible when we look for them. And like, so I'm not afraid of like using the word Jesus, and I'm not afraid of like citing other spiritual beliefs. I think there's so many different ways up the same mountain. Right. And so that's my first thing. The first thing I want to say is like, I love God. And I think part of that for me is it's something that I've had to cultivate over time. I can actually tell you the moment when I had the change. So there was this one day I was what?
When you said the change.
I know. I'm like, why did I say that like I'm menopausal?
Dear God, it's me, Anthony.
Dear God. I'm having heat flashes.
Okay, so when you had the change.
So when I had the change, so I don't remember. Okay. I remember what I was doing. So I was riding my bike before it was stolen. An old Catholic me would have thought that's God punishing me, but no, I just lived in.
Was it raining?
No, it was. It was raining.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. And I was masturbating at the same time. It was raining. I was masturbating riding my bike. It was Berkeley.
I love it.
Yeah. So I was riding my bike. It was raining, and I was praying. Right. I was doing the third step prayer, and I was just praying. And at some point, I stopped, and I go, "What the fuck am I even doing?" Like, I'm saying this out loud. I'm like, what the fuck am I even doing? This is so ridiculous. Like, there is no fucking God. Why am I kidding myself? Like, I just started like yelling and riding my bike. And I'm like, oh, it was just so angry. And I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. And like, it's fucking raining. And like, there's no fucking God. Like, I'm just like so upset, you know? And at some point I stopped and I started laughing, because I think that is the moment I connected with the power greater than myself. It was like the second when I remember I just started laughing, and I felt this like presence and this connection, and I thought, oh, right. And I think the way I came into contact with God was I stopped fucking lying, right? Like I was doing this thing, and like I was just kind of like just doing this thing, but like I wasn't connected to it, and I was just kind of, and then the second I was like, what is this shit? You know, I feel like that is the moment I started to become the person that God had wanted me to become.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm trying to, I feel like that jogs for me. I don't think I had like that type of like burning bush moment.
Yeah.
But I think my journey with spirituality is kind of similar in the sense that like I felt my higher power. I started to feel my higher power when I started to let go of like the rules specifically, right? The rules of what I thought were there to help me find it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's when I started to realize kind of the whole like religion versus spirituality thing. I was like, oh, now I feel it, because I'm not worried so much about like all the external stuff.
That's right.
It's the feeling. And I get that feeling much more when I'm not putting these like weird expectations about like, you know, like Yeah.
What just happened to you?
Because I'm trying to be really conscious of like not coming for like any one religion or just religion in general, because I think that's, like you said, like it's great.
You're allowed to have your opinions.
Okay, yeah. So it's great and it's there for a reason. There's a lot to take from it, right? But so much of like those like external object things, like the cross or the places of worship, like that's what makes me think that like I have to do those things in order to feel higher power. And then when I let go of that is when I actually felt it the most.
Right.
And that's my own higher power.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, we're both describing the same thing. That's kind of like releasing and like something. One of our producers is yawning so hard right now. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so sad. Oh my God. The second I turned over, he's just like big ass yawn.
Maybe that's how he connects with his higher power, is through yawn.
Through Ambien. So one of the things I love what's said in the big book, or in the third step, which is this is actually in the 12 and 12, that like all we need is willingness, right? Like just willing to be willing, right? And that's all it takes, is like this. All you need is like a hole in the armor, even if it's the size of an atom, you know, like just the smallest hole in the armor, and something happens. At least that's been my experience, right? And for me, it was that letting go. You know, it's like that letting go, and then I opened up. You know, one of my Sandy Beach talks about this in one of his talks, RIP Sandy Beach. But he talks about how so many of us, like, they find all these different ways of talking about God and all the different names we give God. And he goes, at some point you realize, oh shit, we're all talking about the same God. Right. That's been my experience today. You know, it's like so for example, like my family is very religious. You know, my family believes in Christ and Christ's teachings and stuff like this. And I listen to them and I'm like, oh, I believe in that same person too. Right. Like, I'm like, I know what you're talking about. And I think that's why in the big book, it says we are wise not to, what is it? It's like, basically like, we are wise to listen to religious people, like not to just kind of reject them wholesale. And it's true, you know, like, I think when I let go of my hangups and stuff like that, and I listen to where religious people are right and where I can connect, I'm convinced we're all talking about the same God. Yeah. And Sandy Beach talks about that.
Well, what hangups do you have? I mean, I could talk about some of mine.
My hangups when it comes to, I don't know if it's a hang up so much as it is like a love for LGBT plus people, right? Not to be kind of to do a little political pivot. But I don't know that, like, for example, my partner's parents pretend like I don't exist. Yeah, you do hear that in the cafe. Yeah, it's really loud. Yeah, but so my partner's parents pretend like I don't exist. Like, they know I exist, but whenever my name comes up or something like that, they kind of go past it, because they're very religious and like they can't acknowledge that like their son is gay, and you know what I mean, and he's in this relationship. So I can't, that's one of my hangups. One of my hangups is like, I can't, like, that's hard to fuck with. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to get on board with someone who I think is loving the same God that I love, but is choosing this like perspective that is actually quite hurtful. What's really interesting is that this is kind of a longer story, but to keep it brief, for Christmas, she gave my partner this book. It's called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Do you know it?
I do not, but go on.
Yeah, it's called Mere Christianity. It's by C.S. Lewis. And she also sent it to family friends, right? No, she doesn't know that no one's reading it, but I went and I bought the book and I started reading it because I want to know more about her. I'm like, she recommended this book to people. Like, I want to learn more about her, and I'm going to do it through this book that she recommended people. Okay. Right. And I started reading it, and it's quite a beautiful book. I mean, some of it's kind of problematic, but it's a beautiful book. And then I was like, I'm going to look up C.S. Lewis and to see what his stance is on gay people. And like, I looked it up, and basically what he said is that Christians are hypocritical. And he's like a Christian author and people love him. Like, people who are Christian love him. And he says that like Christians are hypocritical if they're going to persecute or like they're going to be prejudiced against or discriminate against gay people, because there are all of these different things that basically he says that people are cherry picking from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, this is so interesting. I wonder if she knows that she loves this author who has this opinion. You know what I mean? I'm like,
and did you make her aware of it?
No.
Oh, you're saving it for a rainy
No,
day.
She may think I'm invisible, but I still respect her. You know, like his parents are quite wonderful. You know, just notwithstanding that they are wonderful. They're good people. You know, they just have this thing, and it's hard for me to get behind that. How about you? What's your hang up?
I think my hang up is actually not the most original, but like I think one of my defaults is always like, believing in a higher power is uncool, right?
Oh yeah.
I think there's that one, and then this is a me thing, but it's definitely something. And maybe it's the meetings that I go to or the little bubble that I'm in, but I feel like sometimes like it's like we're too cool for school to talk about God, higher powers.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
And then when you do, then I feel like I immediately see like the lights go off. It's just like nobody wants to talk about it. And so I think like even this is probably the longest I've ever talked to any one given person about this type of thing. Because like in a room full of like, I'll say younger people, I hate bringing it up. Because
can I tell you my opinion on this? I think this is why I think this happens, because it's especially true like in gay recovery circles. Like a lot of at least gay men that I know, like they don't really like talking about God, or it's like, and I think it's for the reasons that we were talking about earlier, which is like, who is going to voluntarily, oh, excuse me, did I just burp into the mic? I think I did this shit last week, but who is going to voluntarily love or look to or praise this thing that they've been told hates them all their life? Right? So it's like very dangerous territory, number one, I think, for a lot of people. And then number two, it is insanely personal, right? It's like, and so that's what I think happens. You know what I mean? It becomes like uncool, or, you know, but if people are working the steps, like I have to believe they have some conception of a power that's greater than themselves.
Yeah, no, I think for me, like I almost feel like it kind of, I think maybe you were saying it too, but like, I think maybe it triggers like, oh, this person believes in something that like is hateful. Therefore, like I can't be their friend.
Like, have you ever been at a gay meeting where they do the Our Father?
Yeah, no,
I know. Like you can see everyone go, everyone like
they tense up.
Everyone tenses
I mean,
up,
I'll be honest, I tense up, but not because of that. I just don't know it in English. I know it in Spanish. Because it was ingrained by my parents.
I know the Hail Mary in Spanish. Wait, what's the Our Father?
I feel like you have to do.
How does the Our Father start? What's just the first
in Spanish?
Yeah,
Padre Nuestro.
Oh yeah, I do know it. Padre Nuestro que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Yeah.
I guess we are calling the four corners.
And then do you know this, the Hail Mary?
I don't.
Dios te salve María, llena de gracia.
I was a good kid. I didn't need to know the Hail Mary.
Okay. Not a Catholic read.
No, that was a you read. That was a you read. No, but I think going back to the whole thing, I think sometimes I kind of just like, I just want to shake people and be like, I swear when I talk about like higher power, it's not about the one that you hate. But also at the same time, I'm like, I'm also not in charge of educating you. Like,
No,
you'll get there. You'll get there. It takes time. I don't know.
You know, one of the things I've believed for a really long time is that God has had horrible PR people. You know what I mean? Because let me just have a moment here. Like the God of my understanding is so life-giving, is so precious, is so like, oh, just blah, you know, it's just so wonderful. And when I'm in touch with God, like life is just so perfect. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I could be sitting in a pile of shit and I'm like, thank you, God. Right. And when I get in touch with that, like I think, oh, this is why there are people who are fanatical. Maybe they also have this experience and they are they want people so bad to have this particular experience. And this is where like I feel like God has bad PR people. You know what I mean? It's like people who, you know, they believe in they do have these experiences, but they just go about kind of communicating these messages in ways that are just inaccessible and alienating.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about spirituality, right? Because it's like you have your own and you're guided by your own set of like inward principles. And because of that, like you carry yourself in like this way that is attractive, right? And because of that, I'm like, oh, cool. So this is nice for you. So that's working, right? As opposed to like the opposite, which is just being told that it works. It's just like, no, I see it work because like, I see how you live your life and that's really cool. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very Quaker principle, right?
Which one?
A very Quaker principle is like not to evangelize, but to live attraction, not promotion, right? Is that like if you believe in this thing and this thing that you believe in, you know, like makes you emanate whatever, you know, then that is your evangelizing. Like living a good life is your evangelizing. And I think when we talk about the 12 steps in AA, for example, we say attraction, not promotion. It's the same idea, right? Like if you're living a good life, right? And you come across someone who's sick and suffering with like substance addictions or process addictions or whatever, and they ask you like, why do you sound and look the way you do? Like, why is your life so good? Right? Like, I think that is one of the ways that we can be of service, right? Like that is one of the ways that I think spirituality exists for me. You know, I am so, for example, like very touched that I have sponsees, you know, that like I get to impart something that someone wants to hear the shit that I think, you know. And I never feel more connected to God than when I'm working with a sponsee or if I'm working with clients, right? When I'm connecting with other people, because I feel in like those moments, I'm like, yes, this is why I'm here, you know? How did we get here? I don't know.
I don't know. And it's funny too, because and I'm not being contrarian. I feel like I feel my higher power the most when I'm by myself.
Are you going through the change?
No. It's definitely like when I'm like out in nature and like I see like.
I mean, I had that experience too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess for context, like I feel very fortunate in that, like, I think, I know what my life's purpose is. I feel very fortunate in that way. And I feel like very blessed in that, like, what I am called to do is work with other people. And my evidence that this is my life's purpose is that because that's when I feel the most like connected and whole. Like, I feel like, you know, like as you know, like I'm a therapist, and so there's just something that comes over me when I'm working with other people. Like words are coming from places that I don't know. I mean, this sounds really woo woo, but it's true. It's like whenever I'm working with a client, like I'm saying things, and I'm like, where is that coming from? You know, or like. Or someone always said, like, I've been told, like, Anthony, like, you always know the thing to say, or like just being around you whenever I did blah, blah. And I can't take credit for that shit. Like, because my default setting is actually quite angry. You know what I mean? Like, if I were relying on myself, I would be not a very nice person, right? Like, my default setting is to be by myself, to fucking tell people to go fuck themselves. Like, go do all your weird shit somewhere else, right? But that's just not what comes over me when I'm like in the company of someone who's sick and suffering, or who is seeking like my advice or whatever. Like, and I think so. Anyway, I'll end by saying that. And I feel very fortunate. Like, I'm like, oh, God has chosen to use me in this way. This is the way, like, I get to do this thing on earth because I can't take credit for it. You know what I mean? And for other people, that's art. And for other people, that's something else, you know? How about you? What do you think yours is?
My purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Such a deep question.
Okay, maybe. Okay.
No. I think it's similar vein of like, just to leave things better than you found them. Yeah. Right. And I think when I say that, it's less about like, like the world. I mean, obviously, like I love nature, but Obviously, I love nature, but I mean, just like in general, just like I'm hoping that like aren't like when I interact with someone that like afterwards it was a good experience versus a bad experience, right? Because I do honestly feel like I'm on borrowed time. I truly feel like anything after
Straight
like my
up.
rock bottom is like you do you remember those old Goosebump books like the
Choose Your Own Adventures? My God, R.L. Stein.
Okay, so do you remember when you would be like, oh, go into the mummy's tomb,
choose your own adventure,
right? And so you're like, okay, well, turn to this page, but you don't like go of the old page. You're like, oh, I didn't actually go there, so I didn't die. So that's how I feel, where I'm like, oh, I got to see what was coming, and then but I got to turn the page back to where I was before.
I have no, you know what's crazy about you bringing up Goosebumps is that my childhood friend, may he rest in peace, Raymond Soto, introduced me to R.L. Stein, and he died while in middle school. So it just feels really like, ooh. Oh yeah. No. That's just really cool. I have like such a fond memory of Goosebumps.
Yeah. So with the borrowed time, it's just like to use it like to be a productive member of society, which sounds like so. Like,
can I tell you a secret? Can I tell you the secret around like human like purpose?
Okay.
I think we all have the same purpose.
Yeah.
It's like, I think this is just my opinion, but I think that the purpose for life, like the reason why we're on earth is to connect, right? Like that is the fundamental kind of purpose. And the way we connect, that's where things start to kind of like look a little different for everyone, you know? And I think, and then my last thought around that is that I also think that sober people are very special. And the reason why that is because I'm a firm believer that many of us should have died a long time ago. Many of us should be like locked up, you know, like
names. Do you want to say names?
The producer that yawns and is playing a game while we're like, but you know, like so many of us,
we're afforded a very special opportunity.
Like actually,
we really are.
And but like actually,
not only are we given just a second life, period, but I feel with that second life, we're actually given like the tools, and right. And like it's so weird that like step 11. I love step 11.
Me too. Yeah.
And it comes so late. It's literally the penultimate step, right? Because it takes 10 fucking. Oops, sorry. It takes 10 fucking steps for us to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
So like you said, like we're all here for the same purpose. And I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's not until we get to 11 after we've gone out of our own bullshit that I can actually listen to how my higher power wants me to like execute.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where the practicality
very
comes.
Nice. Yeah.
Which is what I need. I'm like a human. I need to know what you need me to do.
Yeah.
And it's not until like I get through all my own fucking like all the garbage up here that I can actually listen.
Absolutely. Yeah. There was one other thing that sober people, the that's very beautiful. Thank you. What I was also thinking of was like if you think about people in recovery, like in recovery spaces. And think about the people who like they do the work, you know, like they do the step work, and like every single last one of them has an extraordinary life. Everyone. You know what I mean? Like you have people who are discovering talents. You have people living out their talents. You have people who are like impacting their families in positive ways. You have people who like are inspiring people and they have no idea that they're inspiring people, right? Like there is just this very magical thing that happens when people get sober and they do the work. And I'm also like one of these people that believes like that the 12 steps are divinely inspired. Of course, we are not a 12-step podcast, although we talk about it a lot. But I do think that the 12 steps are divinely inspired. And one of the things that my sponsor said to me very early on was the steps are just there to clear the path between you and God, right? And what happens after that is amazing, right? But you have to clear that path, right?